Derek did a hop, skip, and jump out the door, around the back, and bent inside the bobbed open trunk. He rummaged around for a minute before slamming it shut. We joined him outside and spotted immediately what the mini pit stop was for. He locked his car with the clicker in one hand, but tucked under the other arm was a well-worn soccer ball. Everything was ready. You and Derek leisurely wandered down the path towards the heart of the park. When you officially arrived at your destination, the sun was barely peeking over the horizon. It wasn't dark quite yet, but shadows were threatening to fully embrace the scene any minute. Scattered clumps of strangers enjoyed the summer evening all around the perfectly trimmed field of grass. Parents with their children, groups of teens, elderly pairs, people of all ages of life were there to share in similar yet entirely unique experiences. Derek stood by your side. You could hear him inhale deeply through his nose. He took in the sight contentedly. You glanced away from the wide expanse in front of you to face Derek. He smiled the moment your eyes met. The ball was shifting from one hand to the other. Wanna kick this around? What? I thought we were gonna take turns sitting on it. Maybe that would have happened if I was Nicholas, but you're at the park with Derek and he actually uses balls for their intended purposes. I think I can live with that.
Awesome.
Cool. The two of you claimed the far corner of the grass for your own purposes. No one was likely to interrupt you or be hit by misfired ball there. Derek let the soccer ball fall to the ground with a slight bounce. He warmed up by juggling it side to side up between his legs, popping it up on the top of one foot and letting it drop off again. Working the ball over that way was second nature to him. Derek might not have even intentionally decided to do it. It was purely habit. But then he rolled the ball your way with a tap of his toes. You put more distance between him and you before kicking the ball across the field to return it to the sender. He caught it effortlessly under his heel. The game was on. Back and forth, back and forth. An easy rhythm developed between you and him. There wasn't anyone in the world you could sync with better than Derek. The day grew later, and the park slowly emptied of other people. In the quiet of twilight, the smacking sounds of soccer ball against feet echoed loudly. One catch of Derek's was especially impressive. He'd stop the ball without looking, his fond green eyes squarely on your face. But the longer you played, the more the light in his feature dimmed. It had been a gradual decline now that you'd noticed it. However, it was impossible to ignore now. He weakly passed the ball over to you, and it was going to stop short. You had to jog closer to him to even get it. His complete loss of energy was concerning enough that you'd paused the exchange. For a moment, you only watched Derek stand there, shoulders slumped and expression defeated. You felt grateful for the excuse to be nearer to him given by the slow kick because he spoke distantly to himself. It wouldn't have been impossible to hear from the full length that used to be between you, and you still had to strain your ears to not miss his words. I can't believe how long it's been. I'm here with you in my old park. So much is like it was before, but it's not the same. Why can't I feel the way I used to about it? He mentioned a similar sentiment at the mall, and when you visited Sunset Bar too. Derek pushed it off each time before. That thought had continued to eat away at him despite how much he'd avoided confronting it. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? You pointedly sent the soccer ball over again, putting the ball literally and metaphorically in Derek's court. He pressed the ball under his heels and stared at you just as hard. Distant lamps flickered on around the park. The darkness in Derek's features was contrasted even more strongly when it lit up from behind. It was much later than you realized it was. You know my life story, most of it at least. I wanted to be good at sports, and I tried. In high school and college, I put my all into it. After that, there's not a lot of ways you can go further with it. You can coach or teach or aim to go pro. I had that chance. I could have tried out to make playing an actual career. Really? That was incredible, and it left you entirely stunned. In all the calls you'd had, and during the entire time you'd been here with him, he'd never hinted at anything like that. That's right. He owned up to the admission with deeply furrowed brows and a self-directed sneer. Maybe I would have made it in the minor leagues, maybe even the majors. Maybe I would have faced Planet, but I didn't get far enough to find out because I quit. He twisted away from you and, with a pained shout, Derek struck the soccer ball off towards nowhere with all his strength, and shot into the distance, vanishing completely in the inky skyline before you ever saw it start to slow. Derek stared at where the old ball from his much younger days had gone, even though it was truly and thoroughly gone. I gave up and left, and that's it. You could merely look on with concern. Derek's solemn mask stayed perfectly set, his empty hands squeezed into iron-balled fists, solid and all too heavy to hold up. I did love sports. I think I did. Sometimes I'm not sure I can remember. What I do know is that I had something to prove. If I ever stopped, it felt like I'd be giving up. I'd be a quitter and a failure who couldn't cut in, and I could never arrive either. There was always another goal in the distance that I still hadn't reached, so I had to keep going. Derek's eyes were hazy. His chest rose and fell at an unsteady pace. He still hadn't stopped looking out at the dark, expecting and getting nothing from it. Downgrading my playing to nothing more than a hobby would have been the same as not playing at all. Wasted effort, wasted potential. What a shame. That's what people would think.
That's what I thought.
It's what I thought. I know it's true. All I did was develop those skills. If I don't use them, then what was the point of trying so hard? For a second time, a long hidden anger crackled. He had faced you in his fury, but again, Derek let it settle back into somberness before continuing to address you. But like I said, what does that mean? Where could that go other than doing it forever? How did it take me this long to realize something that obvious? I was going to have to do it forever. That would have been fine if I had actually wanted to spend my whole life and all my time on perfecting my passing skills, but no, not that smart. From the start, it was a means to an end. I'd be good at sports, and then I'd feel worth something, and then I could really live my life. Missing time with friends and family, the crazy hours I had been waiting for when that would finally stop. It never did and never would unless I stopped it. You can see the results of my hard work and great planning right in front of you. I went home as the guy who couldn't make it. I got my life back, but I don't feel the tiniest bit better. It might be worse than when I was more thick-headed and could tell myself I was really doing something. Being here hasn't turned back the clock. I can't look forward to what life could be when I'm grown up. I'm just an adult who wasted so much of my life already cause I had a chip on my shoulder, and I'm so pissed off. His face fell into his hands. That was where the story of Derek stopped. You resolved to reassure him somehow. If there was one person in this world who deserved to hold his head high, it was Derek Suarez. You've done so much for so many people. That is already worth something. Carefully, Derek's face lifted. His shoulders remained bowed, though you could see his eyes. Regret is what you saw in them, but you had his attention. You're irreplaceable to your family and to me. No one has your character. No one has your determination. No one considers others more. You're not a quitter or failure or anything else like that. I can't let you keep believing being you is a waste. You should enjoy every day you have coming. I'll be here to remind you of that and to help make sure it happens. Finally, small smiles began to settle on both of your faces once again. The gloom wasn't insurmountable. Nothing was when you and Derek were together. You were a team. It was evident in the way he looked at you. Facing the darkness around him left Derek lost. But fears and reservations faded when he had you to lean on, and it was the same for you with him. Man, how am I supposed to say no to that? I don't admire anyone more. I love you. He stood tall in front of you, with a smile perked on just one side, not because he couldn't make it whole this time. He was smirking. Okay, I'm about to tell you something that will not be a surprise. My dad did football when he was in high school and college. Hearing stories of that is where my sports aspiration came from. So I was a little original since I ended up going for a different sport. Derek, wanting to be like his father, I've never heard of such a thing.
I figured.
I figured. Also, not surprised was that I sucked at it, and I was scrawny, and I hated that. Getting better became the main driving force in my life, and focusing on that, putting in so much effort there, it kind of made everything else easier. Being the oldest, having responsibilities in my family, having to be reliable, it felt less scary when there was an even bigger goal to hit. Everything else was nothing. I never had to directly confront my feelings of inadequacy and accept myself for what I was, because instead I could say I wouldn't be the way I was forever. I'd become successful. But I put proving myself and being talented over being happy. I missed so many things. I barely let myself see you. And there was no way I could have started a relationship when I knew I wouldn't have been able to prioritize it as much as I should. You deserved better. But things were happening. You were there through all those years.
I could have just
I
been
think
happy
that's what really
the whole
hurts.
time.
I could have just been happy the whole time. Derek's words disappeared as a whisper in the dark. His eyes closed, and he took a moment of silence to mourn the life he might have known if he'd had the confidence to go for it sooner. I think you're really admirable, Derek. Your voice reached Derek, his eyes flutter open, unafraid to face what was ahead of him.
I know.
I know, Faye. I wish I let myself believe it sooner, but I do now. You embraced him. After everything, you felt Derek could definitely use a hug. You wanted to make sure he knew you were there. He held you back as soon as you were around him. His body was welcoming and solid against yours. You hoped your presence was as reassuring to him as it was to you. The pounding of his heart told you it at least had some impact on him. I know you'll figure out what's best for you. If you think so, then it's gotta be true. I'll figure it out, but either way, it's still about the journey, not the destination and all that. On the happiest note possible, Derek released his hold on you to ruffle his hair.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Faye. It's cool being able to talk to you about things. I feel so much better. Derek's face was so hopeful and gentle and wonderful. You're really good at the girlfriend thing, huh? I'm ever impressed. Derek lightly clasped his hands together, stretched them apart, and pressed them against each other again. He was clapping along to a song only he could hear. One thing that was certainly shared between you was a warmth over your cheeks. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, Derek let out a bellowing groan. The massive release of air looked to physically deflate his body. Derek's torso dropped lower and lower until he could have reached his toes. He was expectantly flexible.
Oh, man.
I'm gonna have to go get that ball now. You laughed instantly, partly at the revelation, and partly at the dramatic sulk it had been set with. Still bent in half, he stuck his hands against his hips and twisted his head up so you could see him wink. It was a gift. I'm not gonna abandon it there. I forgot about that. Oh well, count me in. We tackle life's problems together.
You know it.
You know it, Team Faye and Derek forever. At that wholehearted cheer, Derek ran headlong through the bush. You chased after him and with leaping steps. You peeked under every picnic table and behind every trash can in the general area before the lone soccer ball was discovered tucked away amongst some flowers. Thankfully, none of the petals were harmed by it coming to rest in their bed. Derek lifted the ball over his head dramatically as if he was the lead in the video game who got a brand new item to equip. He applauded. The two of you returned to Derek's car from there, the last one still in the lot, and left the park behind victoriously. Shuffled back into the silent apartment after another long day out. When Derek hit the light switch and illuminated the space, he began to chuckle airily. Oh, the first sight that greeted you was counters spilling over with unsorted bags of miscellaneous dry goods. They'd remained right where you'd left them in the rush of that morning, patiently waiting for their turn to be put away. Even though you saw Derek put them there with your own eyes, their existence had entirely faded from your mind. All you'd been imagining when stepping through the door was a free and clear path to your room in the apartment, and the cozy bed that was included. Your thoughts were spoken aloud, though not by you.
Oops.
I forgot about those. He scratched the top of his head like he was staring at a blackboard covered in algebra. but he cleared away the initial bewilderment with a firm clap of his hands. Derek kept them clasped together while glancing at you. You can go get ready for bed. I'll put them away real quick. I'm gonna feel uneasy trying to sleep if I know this still isn't done. Some of those are mine. It's only fair that I put them away. Derek had to be Derek and offered to do it all himself. However, you had to be you and insist on helping anyway. But I'm the one who's gotta do it right now. Derek, that's not the point. His brows pinched with a twinge of regret that his problem was becoming yours. However, you didn't need to explain again how that was what you wanted. Derek swallowed the instinct to insist you go rest or apologize and grinned instead.
Let's
Thanks.
get to it.
Let's do it, team. Time was called, and you got to work on the final task before rest could come. There was more of a system for the cupboards than there was with the fridge and freezer. You fished goods out of the bags, passed them to Derek, and he placed them on the shelf where they belonged. As he rearranged his serviceable spice set to make room for more goods, Derek explained his thought process. He preferred having breakfast stuff in one cupboard and the far end of the kitchen, seasoning and baked goods together in another, the shelf closest to the stovetop, and everything else in the middle. When you'd gotten the layout, you switched to putting items away directly instead of playing the support role. With your combined efforts, it only took a few minutes. After the plastic bags had all been stuffed in the space under the sink, you high-tended, smacking both your hands against Derek's for a job well done. Having a partner to tackle small problems was just as nice as having someone you could count on for life's bigger struggles. Derek had matched your thoughts on forgetting the groceries, and you felt that working together to put those away had brought your minds in sync again. His expression was peaceful. A weight had been lifted off his broad shoulders, both from the perfectly orderly kitchen and company he had within it. Derek waved a hand in an arch that was as wide as the smile on his face.
Night.
Night, Faye. Good night. Have a safe trip to your room. As you passed you, gave him a quick kiss. It was sweet. It was a sweet, affectionate touch. The heat of his skin was still enough to keep you cozy inside and out. You needed that to get through the inevitable separation. That left Derek frozen in place, watching you go so dreamily that perhaps he'd already fallen asleep while standing there. Your quality time with Derek was put on a temporary pause to prepare for bed and collapse into your sheets. But in a blink, the sun had risen once more. He repeated the process of getting ready, though with the goal of being ready to face the day rather than conclude it. One thing he decided against was changing clothes. You'd fully dress when it was closer to when you'd be heading out for the business event. From there, you went into the living room. The, per- the perfectly clean counters were a welcome sight after your efforts the night before. Those last moments of the previous day had gone gone by so fast, and you fell asleep so immediately it honestly felt like a 10-minute time out had been called rather than several hours passing. But Derek's warm greetings was still welcome to your ears.
Morning.
Morning, it's a brand new day, a fresh start, and we're already set to make the most of it. He resolved from the park hadn't his resolve from the park hadn't been lost under the light of a new day. Rather, the Derek from the dark moments seemed a lifetime away from the man in front of you now. Morning, that's gonna be an adventure, for sure. How do you sleep? It was another good night. I slept soundly.
Awesome.
His eyes darted towards the tidy kitchen where plenty of supplies were tucked away. Then his gaze returned to you. Before our big day, we've gotta have breakfast. Can't be running on empty. Yeah, I'll get something. Derek's meal consisted of scrambled eggs and a side of cinnamon steel cut oats cooked in almond milk. You prepared some eggs with simple accompaniments. Plates, bowls, cups, and utensils were set at the table, and the two of you sat yourselves down in chairs. You noticed Derek focused on a single part of his food at a time. He didn't start working through the oatmeal until the eggs were entirely gone. Between bites, Derek chatted idly about your plans.
So?
Do you know what you're gonna wear for the thing, our important networking gathering? That said, it was business casual, but I'm not gonna stress over what that means. From his stories, some event runners think business casual is wearing a blazer instead of a suit jacket, but the rest of the suit stays, and others believe it means you can roll up in shorts. I can manage that. Cool. He drummed his fingers against the tabletop in slow, even beats. Derek's gaze drifted towards the tall glass doors and the wild world beyond them. It's an early lunch, but we're still gonna have some time to kill before needing to head out. If you don't mind, I might go over some aspects of the business as a refresher. His face was still tilted to the side, but he glanced at you out of the corner of his eyes, a cheeky smile pulled upwards. People might actually want to talk to me about the shop at this company owner luncheon. Through light-hearted laughter, Derek rattled off aspects of the business he could look into. Their current main suppliers, relevant regulations our dads have to follow, current sales traders, and all that. You chatted with him about it. You reminded him of some market trends and tourism levels in the area. He appreciated the input. Everything should be covered with your two forward-thinking brains working together. Derek grew more and more determined as he spoke. He stopped briefly to polish off his oatmeal and down a bottle of sports drink. Follow this lead and made quick work of your breakfast. Both of you cleared off your own dishes to keep the space clean. There was no rush that morning. Derek wiped his hands off a towel after washing up, but instead of placing it down, he clutched it shyly, protectively in front of his chest. He kept his voice sounding relaxed. So, does this still count as a date? It's not what I invited you out for, but we swapped one event for another instead of canceling.
What do you think?
Lunch dates are pretty common, but maybe not business luncheons. What do you think? Yeah, networking date.
Awesome.
It's still a date. We're such working professionals. We romance as we finance. Exactly. He tossed the towel over his shoulders victoriously. It landed on the counter without him needing to look. I'm off to hit the books, which is a phrase that makes it sound way more exciting than it actually is.
See you.
Be back soon. Bye. Derek skipped down the hall and shut himself away in his bedroom, the one place in the apartment he still hadn't seen despite living there for multiple days. Either way, there was a lengthy job right ahead of you, but before that, you had another equally important duty. With how busy each day in Prison Vista City had been, it was rare when you had time to keep up with texts. You needed to reach out to your family while you could. Lee was on a trip herself, gallivanting around Europe. She sent you a whole series of photos she'd taken from foods she'd eaten to fashion she'd worn. It all looked amazing. Liz shot you back a message to say she was so swamped. She apologized but had little time to chat with her little sister. Knowing Liz was okay comforted you, and so did seeing how her queenly attitude still hadn't changed. But it was a bit sad that both of you had such separate lives now that you were grown. Your digital conversation wrapped up, and it was still too soon to get ready.